Hi there, welcome to today's session of Every Mark Matters with myself, Mr. McDonald. Today what we are going to do is we're going to have a look at Edexcel History Paper 3, USA Problems at Home and Abroad, and this is the exam paper that explicitly focuses on the war in Vietnam and the Civil Rights Movement. We've got an absolutely lovely question today. Explain why the USA became more involved in the conflict in Vietnam in the years 1954 and 1963. Let's have a quick look at this question. And it's a great question, this, but there's a massive trap in it. Let's see if we can work out what the trap is. So first and foremost, we will start with our command phrase. And in this question is explain why. And what you must do is you must present 3 reasons. And explain them. Dead easy stuff. And remember, if you only do 2, that means you are capped at 8 marks. Okay, really important. Alright, right, let's have a quick look at the focus of the question. So our focus, that's the knowledge that you must add in. So if you put knowledge that's not relevant to the focus, you're not going to get any marks. And what thousands of candidates, when they write in the exams, they make a mistake over the focus and they talk about things that aren't relevant. And this is where our trap comes into play. So our focus of the question is, why did the USA become more involved in Vietnam? All right, now be careful. The years of 1954 to 1963, so you cannot talk about the Gulf of Tonkin. So I'm just going to put Tonkin here. I'm going to try and put Tonkin anyway. All right, you can't talk about the Gulf of Tonkin. All right, so why don't you press pause now and consider 3 or 4 reasons why the USA got involved in the war between 1954 and 1963. Use your revision guide, use your history books, use your textbook, use an online resource. Press pause, and I'll see you shortly. Right, okay, so allow me to add in what I think are maybe the 3 main reasons. So first and foremost, you've got the domino theory. And remember, that is the theory that if one country becomes communist, all the countries around it will become communist. And it's created by one of my absolute historical heroes. It's created by President Eisenhower. Okay? Right, our next reason why the USA gets involved is because of Prime Minister Diem's leadership. Remember, this guy's Catholic, and what happens is he prioritizes his family and gives them powerful positions. He also persecutes the Buddhists. And then moreover, he refuses to hold elections in 1957. And then maybe the final reason that I'm going to use, I'm going to refer to JFK, another great president. And remember, because he's really worried about Diem. Because he knows if he fails, South Vietnam will turn to communism. Alright, so in essence, there's a bit of a link here. If he fails, the domino theory happens. So what JFK does is he creates a strategic Hamlet program. He sends in the Green Berets. And I would say he has a more active approach. He doesn't send in the army like Johnson does, but he has a more active approach, a more active role approach. Okay? You could have some honourable mentions. You could also refer to French defeat. You could refer to the Geneva Accords. Remember, that splits up Vietnam into South Vietnam and North Vietnam, with North being communist, South being capitalist. You could also refer to the Cold War if you wanted to. There's great stuff to add in there. Let's have a look at the final element of this question, and that is your second order concept. And with this question, it's causation. And what great phrases you can use here is this led to, as a result, not great with the spacing of the words there, this meant that. You know, these are great words you can use, or great phrases that you can use, meant that. Okay, this question is a 12-mark question, so it means you need to do 3 paragraphs, 15 minutes. Okay, right, let's just think about the mark scheme here. So AO1, that is your knowledge, it's a funny looking one. AO2, that's your explanation, so I'm going to put knowledge here, an explanation here, and obviously we have this whole paper is marked in level 1, 2, 3 and 4. Level 1 does not mean grade 1, level 3 does not mean grade 1, it's the grade 3, it's the quality of your answer. For level 1 knowledge, you need to make sure you've got 2 facts per paragraph. For level 4, you need to have 2 precise facts. In terms of your explanation, what you need to do is you need to make sure you've got 2 sentences per para. And then for level 4, you need to have 3 sentences. Per para. And that will work out as how, why, so what. And just to define what I mean by that, how, I've done that again, how. Okay, so your how is how, let's say we're doing DM's leadership, how did DM's leadership lead to US involvement? Why? So why did it lead to US involvement? And then so what? And I define that as like a moody teenager from year 8 is, why is it important? Nice and simple. So your paragraphs would be structured as presented a reason, 2 precise facts to back it up, how, why, so what. Okay, 15 minutes. Press pause, put all your distractions away, put all your notebooks away. Take the time now to have a go at answering the question. Press pause, and we'll look at our answers together. I'll see you shortly. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. Here's what we'll do then. I'm going to mark mine, and I'm going to read out my answers. I'm conscious of my ugly handwriting. As I'm doing it, I'm going to self-assess, and I'm going to annotate using AO1 and AO2. Okay, remember AO1 means knowledge, AO2 means explanation. Let's get started. So, one reason why the USA became more involved in the conflict in Vietnam between 1954 and 1963 was the domino theory. There's your AO2 straight away. I've simply presented the reason. Edexcel will see that as AO2. The domino theory was created by President Eisenhower in 1954, so there's some AO1 plus. As well as I've actually defined what the domino theory was, and was the idea that if one country became communist, other countries around it would fall to communism like dominoes. So I'll put my AO1 there as well. I also know that the USA was particularly threatened by communism as it threatened the wealth of the USA, and was a key reason why the USA was involved in the Cold War with the USSR. Right, so there's the AO1 as I've defined it. As I've said why they're worried about it. Again, there's AO1, and I really like this little phrase here about how it's linked to the Cold War, so I'm going to refer to that as AO1 plus. So again, what I've done there is I presented two facts. So there's fact 1, there's fact 2. This led to US involvement in Vietnam as they believed it was important to stop the spread of communism in Southeast Asia to avoid the USA falling to communism eventually. There's my AO2 how. As a result, US involvement increased over the years to try and stop or reduce the impact of the Viet Cong or the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which were having military success against the capitalist South Vietnamese. There's my Y. Again, there's my AO2 with my Y. This was important because the domino theory created an immense fear in the USA and ultimately contributed to all the other reasons for US involvement. There's my so what. So within that paragraph, I've presented the reason, I've got my first fact, I've got my second fact, I've gone on to how, why, so what. Let's have a look at the next one. Another reason why the USA became more involved was because of Diem's leadership. There's AO2 again. For example, I presented knowledge there using for example. For example, Diem became Prime Minister in 1956 after the collapse of the French Empire and initially agreed to hold elections with Ho Chi Minh. Right, so there's AO1. AO1 plus for when he became Prime Minister, and AO1 for when I'm talking about him holding elections, with all Vietnam to decide whether it wanted to unite under communism or not. Here's my first fact. Oh no, I've got a little bit more. Diem held off on these elections and continued to rule capitalist South Vietnam very unpopularly. Right, so there's my first fact. Okay, so what I've got is I've got loads of knowledge there, and I just simply demonstrate how bad he is as a leader. Furthermore, lovely phrase to bring in your second fact. Furthermore, Diem hired all of his relatives and friends to key positions in government and was cruel to peasants and Buddhists as he was Catholic. Right, there's my AO1. Here's my second fact. I feel I have a little bit more on the next page, if I remember correctly, which included Quang Duc, a Buddhist monk, setting fire to himself on live TV in protest to Diem's rule. Perfect. There's the remainder of my second fact. The end, AO1 plus for Quang Duc, the name of the Buddhist monk. This led to US involvement because they knew Diem's unpopularity was contributing to increasing support for the Viet Cong, which needed to be stopped. There's the how. So there's my AO2 how. So I've explained how Diem's leadership led to US involvement. As a result, the USA sent more military advisors and worked hard to build a working relationship with Diem to try and control him. Perfect. There's my AO2Y. So what's so important? This was important because it increased support for communism in the South and created the idea of a puppet regime. There's my so what. Okay, and finally, a final reason why the USA got involved was because of President Kennedy. JFK knew, so there's my AO2. JFK knew about the impact Diem was having on in the countryside and saw the military success of the Viet Cong and believed that peasants were either victims of the Viet Cong attacks or allies. To prevent more peasants turning communist, he wanted to win over the hearts and minds of the Vietnamese people by building schools and hospitals. He also sent the Green Berets, the US Special Forces, to train the Army of South Vietnam. Loads of knowledge in there. So here's my AO1. And again, he's worried about the peasants. There's AO1. AO1, and where I've put hearts and minds, it's AO1 plus. So loads of knowledge here, and again loads of knowledge here. So there's my first fact. It's a bit of a meaty one, but what I'm doing is I'm just presenting knowledge that backs up my reason about JFK. I also know another great way to demonstrate your second fact, that JFK created the Strategic Hamlet Program to keep peasants safe from the Viet Cong, although this increased support as it involved burning down ancestral homes of the peasants. There's my second fact. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to explain how, why, so what. This led to increased US involvement as it meant that the hearts and minds policy was not working or needed to be increased to reduce the impact of the Viet Cong's appeal. There's my how. As a result, so again, just a reminder, I've just used this led to for my how. As a result, JFK continued to spend billions of dollars on South Vietnam as they believed in the domino theory and wanted it to stop. There's my why. This was important because even after he died, this support continued with his successor, President Johnson. And there's my so what. So if I just consider back my mark scheme here that we've just looked at, that we made a moment ago, have I got 2 precise facts in every paragraph? Yes, I have. Have I got how, why, so what? Yes, I have indeed. So what that means is I have, for this question, got a lovely out of 12. I've got 12 out of 12. Take the time to consider the success criteria we made together, and self-assess your own work. Alright, thank you very much for your time. I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.